Today I'm going to demonstrate how to design a user experience for a product and also how to evaluate privacy and ethical implications of a product. So as part of that, the first step is to do a task analysis. After identifying the problem, we have to do key task analysis and also how to do simplifying task flow and also how to improve user experience. So here the problem is the fraudulent transactions. Because of the fraudulent transactions, the organization is facing revenue loss and also the customers are losing trust in the organization. So the goal is to minimize the fraud losses. And the key task in achieving this prevention of fraud transactions is how to identify and distinguish a fraud transaction from a non-fraudulent transaction. To do so, we need to actually collect historic data, study the data, and train the model on historic data so the model will be able to classify the fraud transactions. And to simplify the task flow, we can start with user's goal, user's objective, and work backwards. Understand the process of how user is currently identifying fraud transactions. What are the key factors that the user is relying on to achieve the goal, which can be used as features in training our model. And the next step is how to design user experience, how the user will interact with the proposed solution. So the user can interact with multiple ways. One of the ways is like through feedback loops, through which the model is going to request feedback on the output generated from the user, and the user can provide his feedback on the quality of the output, and the same feedback can be used to retrain the model, which will further improve the performance of the model. And the user input, here we are going to use forms. We are going to collect historic data in the form of forms, which will include different customer and transaction details like amount, customer age, location, and those things that are key factors which will influence the model decisions. We can also include explicit feedback loops that are outside the model, where the model requests user feedback and that can be used to retrain the model. And transparency on model, we should make sure that we communicate to users on what data is being collected and for what purpose that data is being collected, and also provide insight into the importance of attributes and how they influence the model decision. We also can explain the model and make it interpretable so that they can understand on how the model is arriving on a particular classification and why not something else. We also have to communicate uncertainty. For example, in the fraudulent scenarios, there is a good probability that the model might think a non-fraudulent transaction as fraudulent transaction, which is a false positive, which will in turn make users think that the transaction is fraudulent and may make the customer be blocked from accessing his account. All these things can happen, which is the uncertainty in the model, and we have to communicate to the users about the uncertainty. We have to make them understand that the model is just making predictions of probability that a transaction could be fraudulent, and the probability could be wrong sometimes, and the model can make wrong classification, which will in turn cause uncertainty. And the next thing we have to take into consideration is privacy. So as we are dealing with fraudulent transactions, we have to use the data of transactions and also customers, which is PII data. So we have to take PII laws into consideration. And those laws are, if those laws are applicable as of the country the users are located in. In whichever country the users are located and the model is using, that country laws apply to this model and the model should abide by. And which privacy laws are applicable for this financial transaction model? And that laws are Fair Credit Reporting Act FCRA, Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions Act FACTA, Graham-Leach-Bliley Act GLBA, and EU's General Data Protection Regulation (GDPR). This is specifically for any data that is identifiable to a particular customer. And the last step is ethical considerations. We have to identify the potential sources of bias. Here there are multiple sources of bias. A couple are data bias. The historical data might create a bias that maybe certain age group customers were target of fraudulent transactions. Or if we come to representation bias, certain groups are naturally underrepresented in the training data, for example like females, which will cause gender-based bias. And how will we meet goals of ethical AI? Fairness, accountability, and transparency. For fairness, we can achieve model fairness by training the model on a balanced data. We have to make sure that there is no imbalance in the data which will result in model making biased predictions. Accountability. We have to take clear responsibility for outcomes. Communicate to users on what set of values and laws is the system based. What recourse do users have if the system is not behaving in accordance with laws? And the last step is transparency. We can achieve transparency by building interpretable models that are easily understandable by the users and also explain feature importance and also provide simplified approximations. Thank you.